welcome to the Chaos Meets Creation podcast, episode 1. Today we will be going through the introduction of the art. In subsequent episodes, we'll have additional agenda items, not just related to the art and the presentation thereof, but I think it's important to help anyone that's willing to understand a little bit more about what's going on and why this is so engaging, or understand why it's engaging, how it can be more engaging. That's what I want to cover today in this first episode. So let's start with maybe a bit of a definition. So what this is, from what I can tell, is what is called Pareidolia art. And the definition of Pareidolia, from what I've been able to research and find, is basically just anything that makes your brain think something is there when it's not. Examples always given, not just in the visual sense, but auditory as well. If you hear something, someone calling out your name when there's a bunch of noise, you're applying meaning to that noise to try to interpret what's going on in the chaos. In the visual sense, you've probably seen pictures of someone cutting a fruit or a picture of a cloud, and it looks like a bunny, it looks like a smiley face, it looks like a ballerina. And these are all interpretations that our brain is giving to basically nothing, abstract phenomena that would have no other significance other than you're there to observe it. And I think taking a step back from what I also did some research on, at least Carl Sagan's opinion was, this is a architectural feedback mechanism that's evolved in our brains to help us survive. Going back hundreds, thousands of years, the pre-humans and humans were just trying to survive, and any software that our brain could come up with to help make the danger safety sense more efficient was beneficial. Meaning, it's getting dark, you see something rustle or move in the bushes. Oh, what was that? Is it nothing? Is it the wind, or is it a large predatory cat that's about to pounce? In today's world, you are sitting in, your bed and you hear a creak from your house. Oh, it's a robber, right? When really it's just the boards creaking in your house and, there's no danger. Or late at night you see something move in the sky. Oh, it's a UFO, when really it's, a satellite, it's a weather balloon, whatever, all the things that we've heard. These are all what I would say, misfirings of that system in our brain that's evolved to help us recognize patterns, determine our safety, our well-being, threat levels, patterns that would recognize faces, even patterns that would recognize abstract but concepts of what things are. Meaning, what is a kitchen, right? Well, we all going back to the definition of pornography, we recognize it when we see it, right? Because there is no proverbial archetypal kitchen. It's just the room that we associate with storing typically and preparing, sometimes eating food. What is a house, right? Like children, they always draw the box with the triangle on top with maybe a rectangle for the door and two more squares for the windows, and bam, that's the concept of a house. And then if you put a cross on top, then it becomes a church, right? These are the interpretations of what makes the essence of the idea. And I think the brain tries to find patterns to make itself more efficient, obviously, and in the process of looking at the mess and the chaos of the lines on the pages of the art that we are creating here, your brain is trying to interpret meaning where it sees chaos. So I think the engagement comes from that process or that system of trying to find patterns in potentially unconnected data points with another system of a feedback system, which is the reward center. And I think the best way to kind of cross over or tangent into what I'm trying to describe here is think about puzzles. Why do people like to solve puzzles? Well, a puzzle, when you dump it out, is a mess. It's chaos, right? You don't even have all the pieces the right side up. But you know what your end goal is. Your end goal is order. You're trying to create something out of chaos. You have all the pieces, but why is that an activity that is so widely understood as fulfilling or satisfying, right? I think it even crosses into the idea of cleaning. We all hate cleaning, but when we start actually doing it, it actually becomes enjoyable because we're creating order out of disorder, out of chaos. If it weren't that way, you would clean one dish and be done. You would put one piece down in the right spot and be done because you would get all the reward that your brain could give you. And then puzzles and cleaning and all these higher level tasks would no longer serve a purpose. But that's not the case. And I think this is the same system governing the secondary feature of this art. At least at my current understanding, there's two pieces that make this somewhat viral and mimetic. First being hijacking the pattern recognition software that our brain has evolved to use, and the second is finding patterns and solving puzzles rewards our brains with dopamine. Every piece of the puzzle rewards you with a little more dopamine so that you continue to create the order out of the chaos. And it's the same, at least for me, with this art. Every time you solve a puzzle, meaning, at least for me, finding an image in the disorder, in the chaos, and I should say I'm using some words repeatedly because that's kind of where the name comes from. We are creating something seemingly out of nothing, creating something out of the chaos. And again, if there were diminishing returns on solving a puzzle, you would only get seemingly so much that you could satiate before it becomes tedious, droll, and I need to stop because I don't enjoy this anymore. 5 pieces in, 10 pieces in, you've still got 480 whatever pieces left of your puzzle. But that's not the case either. People solve the puzzle to completion because there seems to be this cycle that overcomes the brain of needing to complete the task because there's a momentum being built up. And I come to term that here, at least in the realm of this Pareidolia art, as the momentum train. And just before I go into it, let's go back to the puzzle. Putting one piece down starts the fire of the engine on this train. Putting a second piece down does a little bit more, and maybe the train moves a piston. It hasn't even really moved on the rails. A third piece and a fourth piece, now you're starting to inch along. And for each piece you find, again, you get that dopamine spurt. That's the train building that momentum. And once you build up more and more momentum by finding more and more pieces, the cycle accelerates, at least in my experiences with the art. And so going back to the art, knowing how to interpret or find the patterns through maybe studying it a little bit more than what may seem, recreational, has created this very rapid pattern recognition dopamine cycle. And I think that's where the engagement comes from. If you just looked at a bowl of fruit in a museum and it was photoreal, all you could really do as a lay person, without real, because I think the majority of us are non-artists. I would include myself. I cannot paint a bowl of fruit. I don't know how to, those time-lapse tutorials where people like put one rectangle of one tint of paint down and then slowly another and another, and it just becomes a person's face and it's like photo real. I can't do that, so I don't classify myself as an artist in that sense. However, for anyone that doesn't have that talent and the educational background to appreciate more than just, wow, that looks really good, there's not much engagement we can draw from art. And I can only speak for myself. That's my experience. I appreciate art. I love going to museums. I love going to traveling and seeing ancient civilizations and their complexes and their ruins, because it is very beautiful. However, you do get that sensory overload, and everything in the museum looks good, and eventually you just get fatigued and, okay, well, there's another bowl of fruit, looks really good, I'm going to walk by because my pattern recognition software says, yeah, bowl of fruit, done, moving on. Painting of a man, looks good, moving on. Hey, there's two people boxing, cool, moving on. And there's not much engagement, and even with very simple Pareidolia art, I think a lot of artists start with one layer and they only flesh out one layer, or they create the framework but then they fill in with just one scene, and they intentionally try to draw specific objects overlapping each other, which is actually not the case with the method that we've created to create the art that we're presenting here. And I think with that creates these much more widely diverse and variant pieces, which we can then layer multiple images on top of each other, so that as you start solving the puzzles, there's more and more to draw from than you would ever expect. Just by example, there are some of these canvases where I'm very surprised that, wow, there's well over 200 images that I've identified. Now, the reason for that is not just because there's one orientation to the art, but what's surprising is you can actually turn it from 0 degrees to 90 to 180 and to 270 and see completely new scenes, completely new images that you can then solve the puzzles for and unlock. And again, for no other reason than let me solve these puzzles and get that feedback mechanism of dopamine spurts, there is something compelling about that in the space of 5, 10, 20 minutes, however long you have to just lose yourself in the lines, in the chaos. Similar to solving a puzzle, right? And I think there's a reason why puzzles get more and more elaborate, more and more pieces, the tones or the pictures that you're trying to replicate become more and more intricate. Because I think similar to any skill that you are, I usually use going back to the Pokemon days when I played Pokemon, the leveling up analogy of, well, yeah, if you solve a 4-piece puzzle and that's your first piece, you can feel good, but if you went back and tried to solve that 4-piece puzzle, you won't get the same amount of return because it's now below your level of capacity. So now let's up to 8, right? And then let's up to let's try 100, and let's try 1,000. And as you up the difficulty, you challenge yourself. I think your brain recognizes, okay, I'm stretching, so I need to reward more for the diligence and the perseverance. And I think the same goes for the art as well. When you push yourself to study and find more than what is readily presenting itself to you, your brain not only gives you the feedback, but again, it tries to associate it with some meaning, because, well, this shouldn't be popping out of nothing. I should be seeing something because it's there. And why would I have not been able to see it before? And your brain starts to explore thoughts. Now, I'm not trying to say that there are answers in the art that will answer your questions, but your brain interacts with, I would say, at least like a mirror as an analogy. The art becomes a mirror because you're looking at it and you're applying things to it that then can bounce back and you can play around with, wiggle, poke at, and in that sense, potentially find profound emotions or ideas within the layers, because you are eventually finding multiple images that relate, create an action, create a thought, create a short video clip. And in that, your brain is trying to find meaning. Now, I'm not saying that meaning, because it's by definition pareidolia art and you're applying it, is false or invalid, but in the moment, you make it real, and therefore it is significant to you. You know, in the sense of, you saw a satellite and thought it was a shooting star and made a wish and set the goal to, okay, I'm going to nail this interview so I can get this dream job. Well, was it the shooting star that made that real, or was it, you set the goal and you worked really hard and you made it manifest, right? Like, whether or not you apply it to the shooting star or not, you still made a significant result, potentially because of your belief and inspiration that you might have gained from the experience of, oh, there's a shooting star, let me make a wish. All that being said, this is just more data, hopefully, to convince you to take another second to look at this, turn it. What's surprising is you might turn it 5 times and return back to base 0 angle, but see completely new ideas and images, just because you've gone through the process of looking at other angles, that now this 5th angle almost feels like a new angle that you've never seen before, rather than it being your base 0. With that, the process of manifesting the renders, the images, the ideas, how best to at least recreate it in my mind, how I experience it, is always evolving. Hence, we have multiple ways of presenting I'm a data guy, so presenting the data so that it can be readily uptaken, readily ingested, readily comprehended. Not to say that it's perfect, because what's very interesting about this style of creation is it is actually very fluid. It is very dynamic. As soon as we think we have a way to present this in its most pure and best presentational form, we begin to render that out, and what we find is the process itself enhances itself to make it easier, make it better presentable, which is very interesting. At least in my experience, and then I've tried to ask those around me for similar comparisons. I think there is something beyond those two architectural structures in our software systems in our brains that is attributing to the engagement and virality of this particular type of art, which is interesting because I don't see particularly anything in direct competition with what we're trying to present. And so in that sense, it's very interesting, and maybe we'll go into it in a different episode, but just to say, like, me being a very data-driven person, going to school and working in a finance background and using data in my own life to push myself forward and track progress and make improvements, making data-driven decisions, I never would have expected that, a simple idea would grow and actually evolve into almost making itself better by interacting with it. And again, the only thing I can really tie back to is, and trust me, I'm not a huge Pokemon fan, but childhood makes an impact. The analogy of leveling up. The more you interact with it, the better your pattern recognition software will be able to interact with this, which in turn makes you get rewarded with more and more and more and more and more and more and more dopamine to feel good and accomplished and hopefully enjoy the content. And in the same sense, for me, as I've studied and leveled up and found these ways to present the variance in presentation, I almost feel obligated to say the enhancement process itself is a feedback loop of you put and poke and interact with the base ideas, and you're rewarded with new solutions to problems or ideas that you didn't even know were potentially on the horizon. And that in itself, mixed with the feedback mechanisms that this is using, is very interesting to me, and I am excited to see excuse me, I'm excited to see where this will go in the future. Is it nothing? I always ask my partner, is this something or is it nothing? Am I crazy or is there something here? And it's mixed feelings because I'm more working on the artistic side of this, and I feel like I'm kind of in uncharted territory for myself because I'm not an artist, like I said, and experiencing this form of self-improving process is also very, very foreign to me. I'm used to, it's almost like a supply chain operational construct where it's very difficult, even once you find a work driver to present a business case and then say, hey, we can get this much return on investment if we fix this one thing, and then getting pushback because there's competition to say, you can't solve that because we have something else that's bigger and more important with a bigger return on investment. You're competing, and even once you get approval, then it has to go through people interpreting your request, and then implementation, and then testing, and then review, and then most of the time it doesn't react the way you thought it would, because lo and behold, you fix one leak and then it just shows that there's a leak underneath. But there's something different now that I've experienced all those processes and process improvement in a real work environment, to then look at this and say, wow, like, is this really all that you needed to do was be the person that spent time on this to then find new ways to work forward? So long story, but I'm excited. Welcome to feedback, welcome to suggestions. The feedback and suggestions don't have to be limited to the art itself, but how to better present it, label it. It could be related to the music. We're playing around with different types of music. I personally like more of the techno instrumental to like kind of rev me up to like really dive through the layers of the canvas, whereas my partner likes the more subtle instrumental classical piano to relax and just enjoy the show, which is totally fine. There's going to be multiple ways to enjoy the art. I look forward to hearing, what you like more so that, I can better align my time allocation to prioritizing those types of files to be uploaded, if that's what is readily and more easily digestible in the beginning. So with that, we have a few minutes left. Let's just enjoy the show for the end. I'll stop talking. Appreciate the time. As always, feedback welcome at this early stage, and we'll try to put out more of these videos as well as more of the episodes. Like I said, they will not always be just on one topic, just talking about the art. I have some ideas about how to make this a little bit more engaging, a little bit more diverse and variant in topic. We'll eventually, hopefully, grow into having my partner on, having guests on, having guests engage more with the art in real time as we host the podcast. And so there's definitely room to grow as we are moving forward into the future. And I think it's an exciting time. Hopefully you enjoy it. And with that, I bid you farewell.